Welcome to Thrones Rewritten. Today we're diving into an epic Game of Thrones what-if tale that reimagines Westeros like never before. Picture this. Arya Stark slays the Night King before the Battle of Winterfell, shattering the army of the dead in one swift strike. But victory comes at a cost. Haunted by the Night King's icy power, Arya faces new battles against Daenerys' fiery ambition, Cersei's deadly schemes, and the darkness within herself. Will she save the North, or become the very thing she destroyed? Grab your dragon glass, subscribe, and hit that bell. Let's rewrite the Song of Ice and Fire together. The winds howled over the Winterfell's battlements, carrying the bite of a winter that refused to relent. Snow swirled in the courtyard below, where men and women of the North, the Vale, and the Free Folk labored to fortify the ancient stronghold. The air was thick with dread, for the army of the dead marched closer with each passing hour. The living had gathered under the banners of House Stark and House Targaryen, united by necessity but divided by mistrust. Jon Snow stood atop the walls, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the darkness seemed to pulse with unnatural life. Arya Stark, cloaked in shadow, moved silently through the Godswood. Her breath was steady, her heart a drumbeat of resolve. She had trained for years in Braavos and honing her body and mind into a weapon. The faceless men had taught her to see without eyes, to kill without hesitation, but this was no ordinary mark. The Night King, the harbinger of death itself, was coming, and Arya had a plan. She had overheard the War Council's grim debates. Daenerys Targaryen's dragons could burn whites, but might falter against the White Walker's magic. Bran, the three-eyed raven, insisted the Night King would come for him, drawn to the Godswood where the weirwood tree stood like a sentinel of bone. Arya had listened, her mind racing. She didn't need dragons or armies. She needed a moment, a single perfect moment. The Godswood was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves and the distant clatter of steel from the castle. Bran sat before the weirwood, his eyes milky and distant, lost in visions only he could see. Arya approached, her boots silent on the snow. "Bran," she whispered, crouching beside him. He turned his head slightly as if he'd known she was there all along. "Arya, you've come to ask about him." She nodded, her hand resting on the hilt of her Valyrian steel dagger. "You said the Night King wants you, that he'll come here. When?" Bran's voice was calm, almost ethereal. "Soon. He senses me as I sense him. The dead are close, closer than the others know." Arya's jaw tightened. "Then we don't wait. We draw him out. Now." Bran studied her, his expression unreadable. "You mean to kill him?" "I mean to end this," she said, her voice low but fierce. "Before the battle, before more die." Bran tilted his head as if weighing her words against the threads of fate. "The Night King is not a man. He is death made flesh. If you fail, I won't." Arya's eyes burned with defiance. "Tell me how to find him." Bran was silent for a long moment, then spoke. "He is already near, watching, waiting for his moment. If you go into the dark beyond the walls, you may find him, but you will not return unchanged." Arya stood, her cloak billowing in the wind. "I never planned to." Under the cover of night, Arya slipped past Winterfell's outer defenses. She moved like a wraith, her small frame blending with the shadows of the Wolfswood. Bran's words echoed in her mind. "The Night King is watching." She carried her dagger, needle at her hip, and a spear tipped with dragon glass. The cold was brutal, seeping into her bones, but she pressed on, her senses sharpened to a razor's edge. The forest was unnaturally still, the usual sounds of wildlife smothered by an oppressive silence. Arya's breath fogged before her as she scanned the darkness. Then she felt it, a chill deeper than winter, a presence that made her skin prickle. She crouched behind a gnarled tree, her eyes narrowing. Ahead, in a clearing shrouded by mist, stood a figure. The Night King. He was taller than any man, his armor a jagged lattice of ice and shadow. His eyes glowed a piercing blue like twin stars in a void. Behind him, a handful of White Walkers stood motionless, their own eyes fixed on the distant glow of Winterfell. Arya's heart raced, but her training held. She was no longer the girl who'd fled King's Landing. She was a killer, forged in blood and loss. The Night King turned his head as if sensing her. Arya froze, her breath caught in her throat. She remembered Jaqen H'ghar's lessons. Death is patient. Death is precise. She waited, counting heartbeats until the Night King's gaze shifted back to the castle. This was her moment. She moved, silent as death itself. The dragon-glass spear was in her hand, its weight familiar. She crept closer, her eyes locked on the Night King's back. The White Walkers remained still, oblivious. 20 paces. 10. 5. She was within striking distance when the Night King turned. His speed was inhuman, his hand snapping out to seize her wrist. The spear fell from her grasp, clattering to the snow. Arya didn't hesitate. She twisted, her free hand drawing the Valyrian steel dagger in a fluid motion. The Night King's grip was like iron, but she was small, agile, trained to slip through death's fingers. She ducked under his arm, spinning to his side, and drove the dagger upward. The blade struck true, piercing the Night King's chest where a heart might have been. A sound like shattering glass filled the air, and the Night King staggered. His eyes widened in the blue light flickering. Arya twisted the dagger, her face a mask of fury. "For the north!" she whispered. The Night King let out a guttural cry, and then he shattered. His body collapsed into a cascade of ice and ash, scattering across the snow. The White Walkers behind him screamed, their forms disintegrating into the same brittle fragments. The mist in the clearing began to lift, and the oppressive cold retreated, replaced by the ordinary chill of winter. Arya stood panting, the dagger still clutched in her hand. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what she'd done. She had killed the Night King. The army of the dead, bound to his will, would crumble. The war was over before it had truly begun. But as she turned to leave, a sharp pain lanced through her chest. She stumbled, clutching at her heart. The Night King's final gaze burned in her mind, those blue eyes boring into her soul. Bran's warning echoed, "You will not return unchanged." Dawn broke over Winterfell, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The castle was abuzz with confusion and cautious hope. Scouts had returned with reports that the Whites had collapsed, their bodies lifeless in the snow. The White Walkers were gone, vanished as if they'd never been. Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen, and Sansa Stark stood in the Great Hall, grappling with the impossible news. Arya entered, her cloak stained with frost and blood. The hall fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Jon stepped forward, his face a mix of relief and concern. "Arya, where have you been? The dead, they are gone." She met his gaze, her eyes haunted. "I killed him," she said simply. "The Night King in the Wolfswood, it's over." The room erupted in murmurs. Daenerys, seated at the high table, leaned forward, her violet eyes narrowing. "You? Alone? How?" Arya's hand tightened around the dagger at her belt. "I did what needed to be done." Sansa approached, her expression unreadable. "Arya, you saved us all, but are you all right?" Arya didn't answer. The pain in her chest had dulled, but it lingered, a shadow beneath her ribs. She felt different, as if a piece of her had been carved away and replaced with something cold and ancient, and she forced a nod. "I'm fine." Jon placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch grounding her. "You've changed the course of this war. The North owes you everything." But Arya's thoughts were elsewhere. She saw the Night King's eyes again, felt the weight of his presence. She had ended him, but at what cost? The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Messengers were sent to every corner of Westeros, proclaiming the defeat of the dead. The lords and ladies of the North hailed Arya as a hero, though she shunned their praise. She spent her time in the Godswood, sitting beside Bran, seeking answers. "What's happening to me?" she asked one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. "Since I killed him, I feel him. In my dreams. In my blood." Bran's gaze was distant, as if he saw beyond the world. The Night King was not a man, but a creation of the children of the forest. His power was tied to the magic of the First Men, to the weirwoods, to me. When you killed him, a fragment of that power passed to you. Arya's heart sank. "Am I becoming like him?" "No," Bran said. "But you carry a piece of his essence. It will change you, strengthen you, but it will also test you. You must master it, or it will consume you." Arya clenched her fists. "I didn't ask for this." "None of us asked for our burdens," Bran replied. "But you are Arya Stark. You will find a way." Meanwhile, the political landscape of Westeros shifted. With the dead defeated, Daenerys turned her attention south to the Iron Throne. Cersei Lannister still held King's Landing, her forces bolstered by the Golden Company. Daenerys' advisors, Tyrion and Varys, urged her to march immediately, capitalizing on the momentum of victory. But tension simmered in Winterfell. The northern lords, led by Sansa, were wary of bending the knee to a Targaryen queen. Jon, caught between his loyalty to Daenerys and his duty to the north, struggled to maintain peace. Arya watched from the sidelines. Her new burden is isolating her. She noticed the way Daenerys' gaze lingered on Jon, the way her dragons grew restless. She saw the cracks forming in their fragile alliance. One night, as Arya trained in the courtyard, Sansa approached. "We need to talk," her sister said, her voice low, "about Daenerys." Arya sheathed needle. "What about her?" "She's dangerous," Sansa said. "She speaks of unity, but she wants submission. The North fought for its freedom. We won't kneel again." Arya's eyes narrowed. "You think she'll turn on us?" "I think she'll do whatever it takes to sit on that throne," Sansa replied. "And Jon, he's blind to it. You've seen how she looks at him. She loves him, but she fears him too. He's a threat to her claim." Arya's thoughts churned. She had no love for Daenerys, but she trusted Jon. Yet the cold in her chest whispered warnings, visions of fire and blood. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. Sansa hesitated. "Watch her. If she moves against the North, against Jon, we need to be ready." Arya nodded, her resolve hardening. She was no longer just a Stark. She was something more, something forged in the dark, and she would protect her family no matter the cost. Far to the south in King's Landing, Cersei Lannister received word of the Night King's defeat. She sat on the Iron Throne, her fingers tracing the armrest's jagged edges. Euron Greyjoy stood before her, his smirk infuriatingly smug. "So, the Stark girl killed the great threat," Cersei said, her voice dripping with disdain. "And now Daenerys thinks she can march south and take my throne." Euron laughed. "Let her come. My fleet will burn her dragons from the sky, and the Golden Company will cut through her Dothraki like butter." Cersei's eyes gleamed. "Good, let them tear each other apart, and when they're weak, we'll strike." But in her heart, Cersei felt a flicker of unease. Arya Stark. The name lingered, a shadow on her mind. She remembered the girl's face, the defiance in her eyes. If Arya could kill the Night King, what else was she capable of? Back in Winterfell, Arya stood alone on the battlement, staring into the night. The stars were bright, unclouded by the shadow of death, but the cold in her chest pulsed, a reminder of the power she now carried. She saw flashes in her mind, visions of ice, of fire, of a throne drenched in blood. She didn't know what they meant, but she knew one thing. The war was far from over. She was Arya Stark, the girl who had slain the Night King. But she was also something else, something new. And as the winds whispered through the north, she vowed to face whatever came next. The halls of Winterfell buzzed with this clamor of preparation, but the air carried a new weight, a fragile hope tempered by suspicion. The army of the dead was no more, shattered by Arya Stark's blade in the Wolfswood. Yet the living, ever prone to division, turned their swords inward. The North, the Vale, and Daenerys Targaryen's forces coexisted uneasily, their unity fraying like a worn tapestry. Above it all, Arya stood apart, haunted by the cold that pulsed in her veins. She had not slept soundly since the Night King's death. Each night her dreams were invaded by visions of ice and shadow. She saw the Night King's blue eyes, felt his ancient malice coiling around her heart. Sometimes she woke with her hands trembling, the Valyrian's steel dagger clutched as if it could ward off the darkness within. Bran's words echoed in her mind. "You carry a piece of his essence. It will change you, strengthen you, but it will also test you." In the Godswood, where the weirwood's red leaves whispered secrets, Arya sought answers. She sat cross-legged before Bran, her brother's pale face illuminated by moonlight. "It's getting worse," she admitted, her voice low. "The dreams, the cold, it's like he's still here, inside me." Bran's eyes, distant yet piercing, met hers. The Night King was a vessel for the magic of the Children of the Forest, bound to the weirwoods and the First Men. When you killed him, that magic sought a new host. "You..." Arya's jaw tightened. "I don't want it. I didn't ask to be his heir." "You are not his heir," Bran said. "You are Arya Stark, but the power is yours now, whether you wish it or not. It sharpens your senses, quickens your reflexes. It may even let you see what others cannot. But it is a fire that burns unless you control it. How? Arya demanded, frustration bleeding into her voice. How do I control something I don't understand? Bran tilted his head as if peering into her soul. Face it, the dreams are not random. They are memories, fragments of what the Night King was. Learn from them, use them, or they will use you. Arya stood, her cloak swirling in the chill wind. She wanted to scream, to drive her dagger into the weirwood and banish the cold forever, but she was no longer a child who could run from her burdens. "And if I can't?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Bran's expression softened, a rare flicker of the boy he'd once been. "You will. You always have." In the great hall, the lords and ladies of Westeros gathered, their voices a cacophony of ambition and fear. Daenerys Targaryen sat at the high table, her silver hair gleaming under torchlight, her dragon's roars occasionally echoing from the hills beyond. Jon Snow stood at her side, his face a mask of conflicted loyalty. Sansa Stark, flanked by the northern lords, watched the proceedings with the Hawk's vigilance. The defeat of the dead had shifted the balance of power. Daenerys, no longer needed as a savior, faced growing resistance from the north. Lord Glover, ever outspoken, rose to his feet. "The North bled for its freedom," he declared. "We bent the knee to Jon Snow, not a Targaryen queen. With the dead gone, why should we march south to fight your war?" Daenerys' eyes narrowed, but her voice was smooth as silk. "The Iron Throne is not my war, Lord Glover. It is Westeros' salvation. Cersei Lannister sits in King's Landing, hoarding power while the realm starves. I will break her wheel for all our sakes." Sansa's response was measured, her tone cool. "The North has sacrificed enough. Our people are weary, our lands ravaged. We will not bleed for a throne that has never served us." The hall tensed, hands inching toward swords. Jon stepped forward, his voice steady but strained. "Enough. We fought the dead together. We can face Cersei together. But we must be united." Tyrion Lannister, Daenerys' hand cleared his throat. "If I may, unity requires trust. The North's concerns are valid. Perhaps a council could be formed, ensuring all voices are heard in the campaign south." Daenerys' gaze flickered to Tyrion, a flash of irritation betraying her composure. "A council," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "Very well, but let it be clear. I am the rightful queen. Those who stand with me will be rewarded. Those who do not will be remembered." The threat hung in the air, and Arya, watching from the shadows, felt the cold in her chest pulse. She saw the way Daenerys' eyes lingered on Jon, a mix of love and suspicion. Sansa had been right. Daenerys was dangerous, not because she was cruel, but because she believed her destiny justified any cost. That night, Arya slipped into Jon's chambers, her movement silent as ever. He sat by the fire, his face etched with exhaustion. "Arya," he said, startled. "What's wrong?" She didn't sit, her eyes scanning the room as if the walls might betray them. "Sansa's worried about Daenerys. She thinks she'll turn on the North. On you." Jon's shoulders sagged. "Daenerys wants what's best for Westeros. She's not Cersei." "She's not Cersei," Arya agreed, "but she's not you either. She looks at you like you're a threat. You're a Targaryen, Jon, her nephew. Her claim to the throne weakens with you alive." Jon's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "I don't want the throne. I never did." "That doesn't matter," Arya said, her voice sharp. "She'll see enemies where there are none. And when she does, her dragons won't care who's in the way." Jon stood pacing. "What would you have me do? Betray her? Start a war within a war?" Arya's hand rested on her dagger, the cold in her chest stirring. "I'm not saying betray her. I'm saying be ready. If she moves against you, against the North, I'll protect you like I always have." Jon looked at her, his eyes searching. "Arya, what happened out there when you killed the Night King? You're different." She wanted to tell him, to confess the dreams, the cold, the fear that she was becoming something monstrous, but the words stuck in her throat. "I did what I had to," she said finally, "and I'll do it again if it keeps our family safe." In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister reclined in her solar, a goblet of arbor gold in hand. The Iron Throne was hers, but reports from the North gnawed at her composure. The Night King's defeat had been a gift. She'd never intended to honor her promise to fight the dead. But Arya Stark's role in it was a thorn in her side. The girl who'd escaped her clutches years ago was now a legend, a slayer of nightmares, and legends, Cersei knew, were dangerous. Euron Greyjoy lounged across from her, his boots propped on a table. "The Dragon Queen's coming south and the North's at her throat," he said, grinning. "Let them butcher each other. My ships will handle the rest." Cersei's lips curled. "Daenerys' dragons are a problem. And Arya Stark, she's a blade in the dark. I want her dealt with." Euron raised an eyebrow. "You want the girl dead? After she killed death itself?" "I want her gone," Cersei snapped. "Send your best. Gold, ships, whatever they need. But make it quiet. No one must know it's me." Euron's grin widened. "Consider it done, my queen. But it'll cost you." Cersei's eyes gleamed with malice. "Name your price." Back in Winterfell, Arya's dreams grew darker. She saw the Night King's creation, the children of the forest driving obsidian into a man's heart. She felt his rage, his purpose, to erase the living, to bring eternal winter. But there were other visions. A throne of iron wreathed in flame, a dragon's shadow over a burning city, a girl with her face standing in a field of ash. Each dream left her weaker, the cold spreading like frost through her veins. She began to notice changes. Her reflexes were sharper, her senses keener. In the training yard, she disarmed Ser Davos in a blink, her movements almost inhuman. When she sparred with Gendry, she dodged his hammer as if she'd seen his swing before he made it. But there were moments of darkness, too. Flashes of anger, urges to strike without reason. She hid them, burying her fear beneath the mask of the girl who'd slain the Night King. Gendry noticed. One evening as they sat by the forge, he set down his hammer and studied her. "You're not yourself, Arya. Not since... you know." She avoided his gaze, sharpening needle with a whetstone. "I'm fine." "You're not," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You're carrying something heavy. Let me help." Arya's hand stilled. She wanted to tell him to share the burden, but the cold whispered warnings, and she saw the Night King's eyes in her mind. "You can't help," she said, her voice colder than she intended. "No one can!" Gendry reached for her hand, but she pulled away, standing. "I need to go," she muttered, fleeing into the night. The tension in the Winterfell reached a breaking point when Daenerys announced her plan to march south within the fortnight. The northern lords protested, citing the need to rebuild. Sansa, ever the diplomat, proposed a compromise. The north would send a smaller force, preserving its strength. Daenerys agreed, but her smile was tight, her eyes calculating. That night, Arya shadowed Daenerys' camp, her instincts sharpened by the cold. She overheard a conversation between Daenerys and Missandei, the queen's closest confidant. "He's a threat, Missandei," Daenerys said, her voice low. "Jon Snow. His claim is stronger than mine, and the North loves him. If they rally behind him—" Missandei's voice was soft. "You love him, your grace. Does that not matter?" Daenerys' laugh was bitter. "Love is a weakness. I cannot afford it. Not now." Arya's blood ran cold, not from the Night King's essence, but from the confirmation of her fears. She melted back into the shadows, her mind racing. Daenerys was planning something. She had to warn Jon. But before she could, the cold surged, stronger than ever. She stumbled, clutching a tree for support. A vision overwhelmed her. A fleet of ships with black sails creeping toward the north. A man with a cruel smile holding a blade dripping with blood. Her own hands stained red, standing over a body she couldn't see. She gasped, the world snapping back into focus. The vision was a warning. Danger was coming, not just from Daenerys, but from the south. Cersei. Arya found Sansa in her solar, poring over maps. "We're not safe," Arya said without preamble. "Cersei's sending assassins. I saw it." Sansa's eyes widened. "Saw it? How?" Arya hesitated, then spoke. "Since I killed the Night King, I've changed. I see things. Visions. One showed ships, men coming for us, for me." Sansa's face paled, but she nodded. "Cersei would never let your deed go unpunished, and with Daenerys pushing south, we're vulnerable." She paused, her voice softening. "Arya, what's happening to you?" Arya's throat tightened. "I don't know, but I'm still me, and I'll protect us." Sansa reached for her hand, squeezing it. "You always have, but you don't have to do it alone." For the first time in days, Arya felt a flicker of warmth. She nodded, resolve hardening. "We need to prepare, strengthen the defenses, and watch Daenerys. She's planning something against Jon." Sansa's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we'll be ready for both threats." In the days that followed, Winterfell became a fortress once more. Scouts patrolled the Wolfswood and archers manned the walls. Arya trained relentlessly, pushing her body to master the cold within. She meditated in the Godswood, seeking to control the visions. Slowly she began to glimpse their meaning. The ships were Euron Greyjoys, sent by Cersei. The assassins were already on their way, targeting her to weaken the north. But the visions of Daenerys troubled her most. She saw fire, blood, a city in ruins. Was it King's Landing, Winterfell? The cold offered no answers, only warnings. One night, as Arya patrolled the outskirts of the castle, she sensed a presence. Her hand went to her dagger, the cold sharpening her senses. A figure emerged from the trees, a man in dark leathers, a curved blade in hand, one of Euron's killers. She moved before he could strike, her dagger flashing. The fight was brief, brutal. The assassin was skilled, but Arya was something more. She drove her blade into his heart, his blood steaming in the snow. As he fell, she saw the crack and sigil on his cloak. Euron, more would come, she knew it, and Daenerys' ambitions loomed larger with each passing day. The North was caught between two queens, and Arya, carrying the Night King's legacy, was its only shield. She looked south, where the stars burned cold. The war for Westeros was just beginning, and she would face it as she always had, with a blade in the dark. Winterfell stood defiant under a sky bruised with storm clouds, its walls bristling with archers and its gates reinforced with iron. The North had survived the Night King, thanks to Arya Stark's blade, but new threats loomed like wolves circling a wounded stag. Daenerys Targaryen's ambition burned brighter than her dragon's fire, and Cersei Lannister's assassins crept closer, their knives aimed at the heart of House Stark. Arya, bearing the cold legacy of the Night King, felt the weight of it all. The visions that haunted her, fire, blood, a throne of ash, grew sharper, urging her toward a destiny she could not escape. The cold in her chest was no longer a mere whisper. It was a pulse, a living thing that sharpened her senses but threatened to consume her. She had learned to wield it, to let it guide her blade and hone her instincts, but each use came at a cost. Her dreams were battlegrounds where the Night King's memories clashed with her own. She saw his creation, the children of the forest binding him to eternal winter. She felt his rage, his purpose to erase the living. But she also saw herself, a girl with a dagger, standing against the dark. She was Arya Stark, and she would not yield. In the Godswood, where the weirwood's red leaves seemed to bleed in the dawn light, Arya sought Bran one last time. "The visions are clearer now," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "Daenerys will burn King's Landing. Cersei's assassins are already here, and I don't know if I can control this power much longer." Bran's milky eyes met hers, unblinking. "The Night King's essence is a tool, Arya, like your dagger, like needle. It is only as dangerous as the hand that wields it. You've seen the future because of it. Now you must shape it." Arya's hands clenched into fists. "How? Daenerys won't listen to reason. Cersei wants me dead. And this thing inside me, it's changing me. I feel it." Bran tilted his head, his voice calm as ever. "You're not becoming the Night King. You're becoming something new. The children created him to protect, but he turned to destruction. You can choose differently. Use the cold to save, not to kill." Arya's breath caught. Save! The word felt foreign, heavy with possibility. She had always been a killer, forged by loss and vengeance. But perhaps there was another path. "And if I fail?" she asked. Bran's lips curved in a faint, rare smile. You won't. You never have." In the Great Hall, the fragile alliance between the North and Daenerys Targaryen frayed to its breaking point. The Northern Lords, led by Sansa Stark, refused to commit their full strength to Daenerys' march south. "The North has bled enough," Sansa declared, her voice ringing with quiet authority. "We will send men, but Winterfell must be protected. Cersei's treachery is no secret." Daenerys, seated at the high table, leaned forward, her violet eyes blazing. "Cersei is a threat to all of Westeros. If we do not unite against her, she will pick us apart one by one. I will not beg for your loyalty, Lady Stark." Jon Snow, caught between his love for Daenerys and his duty to the North, tried to mediate. "We all want Cersei gone, but the North needs time to rebuild. Surely we can find a way." "There is no time," Daenerys interrupted, her voice sharp. "Every day we delay, Cersei grows stronger. I will take the Iron Throne, with or without the North." The hall fell silent, the air thick with tension. Arya, standing in the shadows, felt the cold pulse in her chest. She saw the vision again. A city in flames, dragons roaring overhead. Daenerys' words were a spark, and Arya knew the fire would follow. That night, Arya slipped into Sansa's solar, where her sister was drafting letters to the Vale in the Riverlands. "Daenerys is planning something," Arya said without preamble. "She's not just marching south. She's ready to turn on us if we don't bend the knee." Sansa's quill paused, her face paling. "You're sure?" "I've seen it," Arya said, her voice low. "In my visions, she'll burn anyone who stands in her way. And Jon, she knows about his claim. She'll never let him live." Sansa's eyes hardened. "Then we need to act. Quietly. If Daenerys suspects betrayal, her dragons will turn Winterfell to ash." Arya nodded, her hand resting on her dagger. "I'll watch her. And there's another threat. Cersei's assassins are here. I killed one last night, but more are coming. Euron Greyjoy's men." Sansa's lips pressed into a thin line. "Cersei never changes. We'll double the patrols, fortify the gates, but Daenerys, she's the greater danger now." Arya met her sister's gaze, a silent vow passing between them. They were Starks, bound by blood and duty. Whatever came, they would face it together. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister paced the Red Keep's throne room, her gown trailing like spilled wine. Reports from her spies confirmed the North's discord, but Arya Stark's survival gnawed at her. The girl was a specter, a reminder of every enemy Cersei had failed to crush. Euron Greyjoy's assassins had been sent, but only one had returned, his body found in the Wolfswood with a Stark dagger in his heart. Qyburn, her twisted maester, stood nearby, his hands clasped. "The Golden Company is ready, Your Grace, and Euron's fleet patrols the narrow sea. Daenerys' dragons will find no easy path south." Cersei's eyes gleamed. Good. Let Daenerys and the Starks tear each other apart. When they're weak, we'll strike. But Arya Stark, I want her head." Qyburn bowed. "Euron's best are still in the north. They will not fail again." Cersei turned to the Iron Throne, its jagged blades glinting in the torchlight. "They'd better not," she murmured. "No one escapes me twice." Arya's days became a blur of vigilance and training. She patrolled Winterfell's perimeter, her senses heightened by the cold within. She dispatched 2 more of Euron's assassins, their crackened sigils confirming Cersei's hand. Each kill fueled the cold, sharpening her reflexes but deepening the shadow in her heart. She meditated in the Godswood, seeking to master the visions. They came more clearly now. Daenerys atop Drogon, fire raining on a city. Jon, standing alone, a sword in hand. Arya herself, her face half frozen, holding a crown of ice. She confided in Gendry one evening, unable to bear the weight alone. They sat in the forge, the fire's warmth in stark contrast to the cold in her chest. "It's changing me," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Night King's power. It makes me stronger, but it's, dark. I don't know how much longer I can fight it." Gendry's eyes softened, his hammer still in his lap. "You're the strongest person I know, Arya. You killed the Night King. You can beat this." She shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "What if I can't? What if I become like him?" Gendry reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "You won't. You're Arya Stark. You fight for your family, for the North. That's who you are." His words anchored her, a lifeline in the storm. She squeezed his hand, a silent promise to keep fighting, but the cold whispered warnings, and she knew the true battle was yet to come. The breaking point came on a moonless night when Daenerys summoned Jon to her chambers. Arya, ever watchful, followed, her cloak blending with the shadows. She crouched outside the door, her enhanced senses catching every word. "I love you, Jon," Daenerys said, her voice soft but laced with steel, "but you were a threat to everything I've fought for. Your claim to the throne, it divides us." Jon's voice was steady, pained. "I don't want the throne, Dany. I've told you that." "It's not about what you want," Daenerys replied. "It's about what others will do. The North will rally to you, not me. I cannot allow that." Arya's heart raced, the cold surging. She heard the scrape of a blade, Daenerys's, drawn from a hidden sheath. Without thinking, Arya burst through the door, her dagger in hand. "Stop!" Daenerys froze, her blade inches from Jon's chest. Jon's eyes widened, his hand reaching for Longclaw. "Arya, what—" "She was going to kill you," Arya said, her voice trembling with rage. "I heard her. She's no queen. She's a tyrant." Daenerys' face hardened, her grip tightening on the blade. "You dare accuse me? I am the rightful queen of the Seven Kingdoms." "You're in danger," Arya shot back, stepping closer. The cold roared within her, urging her to strike. "You'd burn the North to ash before you let us be free." Jon stepped between them, his hands raised. "Enough. Both of you, stand down." But Daenerys' eyes blazed with fury. "You Starks will never bend, so be it." She whistled, a sharp piercing sound, and the distant roar of dragons shook the night. Arya acted on instinct, the cold guiding her. She lunged, her dagger flashing, but Jon grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "Arya, no!" Daenerys fled, her guards rushing to her side. The castle erupted into chaos as dragonfire lit the sky. Drogon and Rhaegal swooped low, their flames licking at Winterfell's outer walls. The Northerners rallied, archers firing dragon-glass-tipped arrows, but the dragons were relentless. Arya broke free from Jon's grip, her mind racing. She had to stop Daenerys, but not with fire or steel. She needed the cold. She sprinted to the God's Wood, the heart of Winterfell's ancient magic. There, beneath the weirwood, she closed her eyes and let the visions take her. She saw the Night King's creation, the children's magic, binding him to the weirwoods. She saw herself, a conduit for that same magic. And she saw Daenerys, her dragons, her fire, a force of destruction that could be tempered, not destroyed. The cold surged, but Arya shaped it, channeling it into something new. She felt the weirwood's roots pulse beneath her, the North's ancient power answering her call. When she opened her eyes, frost coated the ground around her, and her breath was a cloud of ice. She was no longer just Arya Stark. She was the North's shield, its blade, its frost. The battle for Winterfell raged into the dawn. Daenerys, astride Drogon, unleashed fire on the castle's defenses, but the Northerners fought with desperate ferocity. Jon led the ground forces, his sword cutting through Dothraki and Unsullied, who followed their queen's orders. Sansa coordinated from the keep, her commands keeping the archers steady. Arya moved like a wraith, her enhanced senses guiding her through the chaos. She climbed the battlements, her eyes locked on Drogon. The dragon's flames lit the night, but Arya felt no fear. The cold was her armor, her weapon. She drew her dragonglass spear, its tip gleaming, and waited. When Drogon dove, Arya struck. She hurled the spear with inhuman precision, the cold lending her strength. The dragonglass pierced Drogon's wings, sending him spiraling to the ground. Daenerys screamed, leaping from the dragon's back as he crashed into the snow. Arya descended, her dagger in hand. Daenerys faced her, and sword drawn, her face a mask of rage and grief. "You've destroyed everything," Daenerys spat. "For what? A frozen wasteland?" "For my family," Arya said, her voice steady. "For the North. For the living." They clashed, steel ringing in the dawn. Daenerys was skilled, driven by fury, but Arya was something more. The cold guided her, her movements a blur. She disarmed Daenerys, pinning her to the ground, her dagger at the queen's throat. "Do it!" Daenerys whispered, her eyes defiant. "Kill me, but the fire will never die." Arya hesitated, the cold urging her to strike, but Bran's words echoed. "Use the cold to save." She saw the vision again, a city in flames, a throne of ash. Killing Daenerys would only fuel the cycle of blood. Instead, Arya pressed the dagger closer, drawing a thin line of blood. "Leave," she said, her voice low. "Take your dragons and go. If you return, I'll end you." Daenerys' eyes widened, but she nodded, her pride shattered. Arya released her, stepping back. Daenerys staggered to Drogon, who stirred weakly and climbed onto his back. With a final roar, the dragon took flight, Rhaegal following. Daenerys Targaryen fled east, her dreams of the Iron Throne in ruins. The battle ended, but the cost was heavy. Winterfell's walls were scorched, its people bloodied. Jon, wounded but alive, found Arya in the Godswood, her face pale but resolute. "You let her go," he said, his voice a mix of relief and disbelief. "She wasn't the enemy," Arya said. Not anymore. The North is free. That's what matters. Jon pulled her into a hug, his warmth grounding her. You saved us, Arya. Again. But the victory was bitter-sweet. As the North mourned its dead, word came from the South. Cersei's forces were marching, the Golden Company at their head. Euron's fleet had landed on the eastern coast, cutting off retreat. The war for Westeros was far from over. Arya, now fully embracing the cold, prepared for the final fight. She trained with Gendry, her movements a blend of mortal skill and otherworldly power. She confided in Sansa, who vowed to lead the North with wisdom and strength, and she stood with Jon, their bond unbreakable. One night, as Arya gazed at the stars, a vision came unbidden, a throne of ice, not iron, standing in a rebuilt Winterfell. She saw herself not as a queen, but as a guardian, the North's eternal protector. The cold was no longer a curse. It was her strength, her purpose. When Cersei's army arrived, Arya was ready. She slipped into the enemy camp, her dagger flashing, sowing chaos. She faced Euron Greyjoy in a duel on the shores of White Harbor, her cold-enhanced speed overwhelming his brute strength. With a single strike she ended him, his kraken banner sinking into the waves. The final battle saw the North, united under Sansa's leadership, defeat the Golden Company. Cersei, betrayed by her own allies, fled King's Landing, only to be hunted down by Arya. In a quiet moment, beneath a weirwood in the Riverlands, Arya faced her old enemy. Cersei's defiance crumbled as Arya's dagger found her heart, fulfilling a promise made long ago. Westeros entered a new age. Sansa was crowned queen in the North, her rule wise and just. Jon, refusing any throne, became the North's protector, leading its armies. Daenerys' fate remained a mystery, her dragon sighted in the Far East, a legend fading into myth. Arya, forever changed, became the North's shadow, its blade in the dark. The cold was her ally, so her visions guiding her to threats before they could strike. She was no longer just Arya Stark. She was the Frostborn, the girl who had shattered the night and forged a new dawn. As she stood on Winterfell's battlements, Gendry at her side, she looked to the horizon. The stars burned bright, and the North was free. The cold pulsed in her chest, a reminder of her burden, her strength. She was ready for whatever came next. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you love diving into epic Star Wars stories and sci-fi adventures, check out my second YouTube channel, The Force Fiction. The link's in the description. Subscribe and join the journey.